The drop ship cut through the upper atmosphere, like a blade through silk, leaving a trail of ionized gas that shimmered against the darkening sky. Below it sprawled the remnants of Earth's eastern bloc, decaying cities, crater highways, forests grown feral in humanity's absence. The Galactic scouts had arrived not with fanfare, but with clinical purpose. Their assignment was simple: assess the planet's residual threat potential and determine whether full occupation was necessary. The consensus among command was clear. Earth was broken, its resistance extinguished. Nothing of danger remained. Inside the sleek interior of the vessel, Commander Trek stood tall, his armor humming softly with embedded neural circuits. His eyes, a deep violet ringed with metallic gold, scanned the terrain through the ship's visual feed. Beside him, Lieutenant Varn, shorter and more cautious, adjusted the calibration on his plasma rifle. "Still can't believe this place resisted for so long," Varn muttered. "Kinetic weapons, combustion rounds, barbaric." Trex chuckled, a low, guttural sound that echoed within his armored throat. "Stubbornness is not the same as strength. They fought like insects, biting when stomped. But in the end, they cracked like all primitives." The ship descended toward a once militarized zone near the Carpathian Ridges, a place marked on galactic maps as Sector 9R. Ground scans had identified a human stronghold there before the planetary surrender. Satellite feeds now showed little more than overgrown barracks and rusting vehicles. The ship's landing struts hissed as they met fractured concrete. As the ramp descended, the scouts fanned out in formation, 6 in all, including Commander. Their forms gleamed with synthesized alloy plating, and their weapons pulsed with latent energy. Around them, nature crept silently over man's lost ambition. Vines choked artillery emplacements, and moss grew thick where pride once stood. Trex approached a derelict firing range. Rusted rifles lay scattered across cracked concrete, some half buried in mud, others still in the hands of skeletons dressed in faded uniforms. He picked up one of the rifles, examining it with faint disgust. "This," he said, holding it up, "this is what kept our fleet at bay for 6 rotations." Varn scanned the area with his HUD. No active power signatures. No electromagnetic anomalies. If there's anything left here, it's ghosts. Trex tossed the rifle aside. "Then let's walk through their graveyard." From a ridge several kilometers away, a lone figure lay still beneath a net of synthetic foliage, the barrel of a long rifle protruding just enough to catch the setting sun. Callan Ward didn't blink. He didn't twitch. His heartbeat was slow, steady, trained. He'd been watching the sky for 2 days, waiting for the shimmer of an incoming drop ship. When it appeared, his breath hitched only once. Through the scope, he watched the aliens disembark, saw the arrogance in their posture, the way they pointed and laughed at what they didn't understand. They moved without caution, confident in their tech, unaware of what Earth had bred in its final years. He'd been wounded weeks ago, left leg useless, bandaged with rags. No medevac, no comrades, just a final objective: observe and report. But he hadn't reported in days. His comms were fried. All he had left was one rifle, 5 rounds, and a war that had never truly ended for him. Through the crosshairs, he focused on the tall one, clearly the leader. The alien moved with the careless assurance of someone who'd never been hunted. Callan noted the slight gap in the armor at the base of the neck, where the plating shifted during motion. A detail, a weakness. He filed it away. One bullet wouldn't be wasted on a warning. The aliens began setting up a temporary base. Small fusion cells powered mobile labs and holographic survey stations. One of the scouts kicked over a human helmet, laughing at the way it rolled. Another urinated on a memorial plaque, oblivious to the name etched in its cracked surface. Callan didn't blink. He breathed in and out, letting the anger slide past like cold wind. He'd seen worse. He'd survived worse. But he hadn't forgotten. Back on the ground, Varn ran a scan of a broken-down tank. These machines, they ran on fuel combustion. Crude, but kind of elegant in their own way. Trex snorted. There's nothing elegant about desperation. Varn hesitated. You ever wonder why it took so long to subdue them? Earth didn't have fleets or quantum armor or drone colonies, but they still dragged the war out for cycles. Because dying men fight hardest, Trek said. Not because they think they'll win, but because they have nothing else. He stepped onto a mound of rubble and addressed the squad. Mark my words. This planet is finished. The humans that remain are scavengers or myths. We'll write the final report, and within a solar week, it'll be forgotten. Callan adjusted his cheek rest. Watch the aliens laugh. Watch one of them throw a human dog tag into a puddle. His finger hovered over the trigger. Not yet. Down below, the galactic flag unfurled on a collapsible pole. Clean, sterile, alien. It fluttered over the old Earth emblem burned into the concrete. The two symbols, one rising, one fallen, told the truth plainly. But far above in a ridge, hidden by silence, the wind shifted slightly. The scope adjusted. The human eye behind it narrowed. The war wasn't over. Not for him. And the trigger hadn't been pulled. Yet. The morning after the scouts arrived, ash-colored fog curled low through the valley, blanketing the ruins and muting the world. A low thermal inversion made the air thick and stagnant, heavy with the memory of fire. Callan lay still beneath his camouflage netting, feeling the cold leach into his bones. He didn't move, not when the birds returned, not even when the distant hum of alien scanners passed over the hillside. Stillness was survival. Patience was his weapon. He had watched them all night. 6 figures moving with glimmering confidence, erecting their shelters, their drones whirring like insects above the remains of barracks. He memorized their shifts, their patrols, the paths they favored between the debris. They never looked up. They never expected eyes to be watching from the old sniper ridge. The same ridge Callan had used when his squad still existed. 2 months ago, that ridge had been alive with chatter. His spotter, Deeks, had set up just to his left, humming out a tune while they waited for an enemy dropship to pass. Deeks had been young, too young, eager, a bit reckless. He didn't even feel the plasma round that poured through his side when they were spotted. He simply stopped mid-sentence, then collapsed, dragging the comrade down with him. Callan had tried to save him, but the medkit was a joke against internal vaporization. He buried Deeks in silence and relocated alone. Communications fried. Legs shattered a week later during an ambush. And yet, Callan hadn't left the field. He couldn't. Something in him refused. Below, the scouts moved with habitual arrogance. They were cataloging weapons, photographing dog tags, scanning insignia, all while speaking into translation nodes. Callan could hear bits of it through his receiver. Commentary laced with disdain. This ammunition is chemically unstable. Primitive kinetic ballistics inefficient. Did they really use these to fight us? Laughter followed. It was always laughter. Callan had heard it before, when they burned refugee caravans from orbit and broadcast it back to Earth satellites. He'd seen too much of that smirking condescension to mistake it for anything but contempt. The aliens weren't curious. They were mocking the dead. He scribbled notes into a damp notebook, range estimates, movement speeds, equipment loadouts. His rifle, an old AXMC platform, lay cradled in his arms like an extension of his breath. A relic, yes, but one built for long-range judgment, the kind that didn't need a second shot. He checked the chamber. 5 rounds, 1 for each remaining scout, and 1 for their commander. Down below, Commander Trek circled a pile of rusted helmets, as if they were curios in a museum. He knelt, lifting a steel one from the pile, tapping it against his palm. No shielding, no neural link, just steel. He stood and tossed it back. How did they last so long with this garbage? They didn't, Varn muttered from nearby. They just refused to quit. Trek's turned, brow raised. Is that admiration I hear? No, Commander, Varn said quickly, eyes on a scanner. Just observation. The commander said nothing, but his gaze lingered. Varn had always been the anomaly, more reserved, less eager to spit on the defeated. It made him valuable but unpredictable. Still, the hierarchy was clear. Trex walked away, activating his AI log with a blink command. Recon log. Day 1. No active resistance found. Structures compromised. Tech negligible. Recommend reclassification to Class D occupation. Minimal defense required. Further analysis pending biological and cultural samples. Across the valley, Callan scribbled the words he could decipher phonetically, noted their assumption. No resistance. No threat. Already they were underestimating him. That was good. At dusk, the scouts turned violent. A family of scavengers, 2 adults and a teen, had been foraging near the southern road when the drones spotted them. The aliens descended like hawks. Callan watched through the scope, paralyzed, as they herded the civilians like cattle, running scans and making remarks he couldn't hear. The teenage boy resisted. A soldier fired a warning shot. Plasma, shoulder wound. The adult screamed. The boy dropped. Callan's jaw clenched so hard he felt his molars grind. One of the aliens laughed. They let the family go, eventually, likely after extracting DNA or retinal scans. The scouts weren't monsters, but they didn't see the humans as people either. They were insects to be tagged, cataloged, and ignored. That changed things. Callan moved slowly that night, inch by inch, setting up a secondary nest closer to the scouts' perimeter. He laid tripwire tins, makeshift sound alerts, in the surrounding brush, dragged himself 20 meters through gravel to a tighter shooting angle. The wound in his leg tore open again, but he gritted through it, shoving gauze into the dressing and biting down hard enough to draw blood. No more watching. No more waiting. The wind shifted just after midnight. Cool and dry. Good conditions. His rifle rested against his shoulder, breath syncing with heartbeat. His finger never touched the trigger. Not yet, but the intention was there now, sharp and unshakable. The scouts hadn't seen death, delivered from 1,000 meters. They hadn't learned that human resolve didn't need fleets or tech or even hope. It only needed cause. And Callan had just found us again. He whispered, not to himself, but to the ghost of Deeks. 1 shot. For you. 1 shot to remind them who we are. And then he waited again. The sniper in the ruins, eyes open while the invaders slept under artificial starlight. The sun cracked the horizon like a slow-burning fuse, light bleeding across the broken ridges and the rust-veined ruins below. Callan's scope remained steady, the reticle hovering inches above the scout's exposed throat. The alien stood lazily near a generator stack, helmet off, sipping from a nutrient pouch, unaware he was already a corpse. A puff of breeze nudged Callan's cheek, and he adjusted slightly, wind compensation. Distance, 1,437 meters. Drop, 3.2 inches. No second shot. No room for error. He exhaled slowly, heart synchronized with the gentle press of his trigger finger. The shot cracked across the valley like a whisper wrapped in thunder. The scout's head snapped backward, a crimson burst painting the air before the body collapsed bonelessly to the concrete. The nutrient pouch rolled from his twitching hand, content spilling across his chest. Callan didn't move. Panic erupted. The remaining scouts scattered, yelling in clipped, distorted Gal standard. Drones launched from their backs, buzzing skyward, scanners pinging in widening circles. Their rifles lit with plasma glow, barrels darting toward hills, windows, rooftops, anywhere, but never the ridge. Through the scope, Callan watched Commander Trek's bark orders. The alien's posture had changed, shoulders hunched, head twitching as he reviewed holographic data streams. A second scout dropped into cover behind a fractured tank tread. Another attempted to triangulate the origin point using optical telemetry, but Earth's irregular terrain disrupted their algorithms. Callan chambered his second round. He waited. Movement near the old radio tower. A scout breaking formation, moving fast. Good. Nervous. Exposed. The rifle cracked again. The scout jerked violently. Spine split, dropped mid-step like a marionette with its strings cut. His body hit the dirt with a thud that rippled through Callan's headphones. 2 shots. 2 confirmed. The others took cover now, their confidence unraveling into suspicion, fear. They weren't used to not seeing the enemy, weren't used to bleeding. Callan shifted slightly, sweat trickling down his jaw. Every breath tasted of copper and old rust. The recoil numbed his shoulder, but he barely registered it. The rifle was part of him now, an extension of every broken promise, every buried comrade. Trex shouted again, louder this time, directing drones toward the southern ridge. Their AI algorithms weren't built for human irregularity. They searched for power signatures, thermal traces, energy trails, none of which Callan gave off. His equipment was analog, his presence a ghost. Another drone passed overhead, scanning wide arcs. Callan reached for a small remote, taped his thigh, and flipped the switch. A short burst of white noise jammed the drone's uplink. Then a secondary charge activated a slingshot trap, a stone and wire contraption that whipped a chunk of rebar into its rotor. The drone spun wildly before crashing into the side of a bunker, flames erupting from its chassis. The scouts retreated to the central structure, their bravado buried beneath silence. Varn paced nervously near the command tent, glancing repeatedly at the hills, fingers twitching on his rifle grip. Trex, however, remained motionless, eyes fixed on the horizon. This is calculated. Varn muttered into his comms. It's not random. He's not just firing. He's hunting. He's one, Trex replied coldly. One primitive with outdated tech. You're afraid of a ghost story. Varn didn't answer. Fear had bloomed behind his eyes, not just for himself, but for the rules he'd always believed in. Superior tech, superior force, superior outcomes. It was all unraveling now. Callan repositioned silently, dragging himself 10 meters east to a secondary firing spot marked the night before. Each movement was agony. His leg throbbed with every shift, dry blood cracking under his uniform. But the position was perfect, an old irrigation culvert facing the command post. He slipped the third round into the chamber. No shot yet. Too much cover. Too much movement. Instead, he waited. Hours passed. He left signs, though small things. A spent casing placed deliberately at the perimeter fence. A footprint near the mess tent. A scratched line of Earth dialect carved into a drone panel. We're still here. The message worked. By dusk, Trex's voice cracked through the comm net again, this time strained, clipped. We will find you human. Your silence is not power. It is cowardice. I will rip you from your hole and drag you before the stars. Callan listened from the darkness, unspeaking. The rage in the alien's voice wasn't dominance. It was frustration, fear. He lowered his scope for a moment and looked out over the valley. The sun bled behind the mountains like a cauterized wound. Shadows lengthened, swallowed ruins, erased trails. Night was his territory. In the command tent, Varn confronted Trex quietly. We need reinforcements. This isn't recon anymore. He's destabilizing the mission. Trex turned, fury flashing in his strange eyes. No, I will not request aid to defeat a cripple hiding in the dirt with a museum piece. He's not hiding, Varn said flatly. He's choosing his moment, and if we keep waiting, he'll pick us off one by one. The silence that followed was heavy. Callan didn't hear the end of the conversation. He had already moved again, leaving behind a strand of bloody cloth pinned to a tree. Another ghost signature. Only 2 rounds left now. 2 chances. But even without pulling the trigger, he was winning. He could feel it. The balance had shifted. Their discipline was cracking. Their tech was failing them where instinct should have prevailed. They came to judge a dead world. Now they knew it could still bite. And in the hills, the sniper smiled without joy, lining up his next ghost story. The wind rolled in cold and biting the next morning, threading through the twisted ruins like a warning. Callan lay belly down in damp soil beneath a blanket of synthetic mesh, eyes locked through the scope as he watched the command tent flutter weakly in the breeze. The camp was quieter now, smaller. 2 scouts dead, a third injured, dragging his leg like dead weight. Their confidence had collapsed inward. The laughter was gone, and in its place sat something alien to them. Doubt. Callan had fired 3 shots in 2 days. Each one deliberate, each one devastating. He hadn't just broken their formation. He had infected them with fear. No matter how advanced their systems, no matter how sleek their armor, none of them had figured out where death was coming from. Their drones couldn't track him. Their scans found nothing but ghosts. The terrain, the world they mocked, was his ally, his camouflage. They were visitors here. He was born of this soil, carved by it. Through his scope, he watched as Commander Trex stood outside the command tent. The alien stance was rigid, armored limbs twitching with poorly restrained anger. A speaker drone hovered beside him, amplifying his voice into the valley, trying to drag the invisible threat into the open. You are one man, one gun. Your planet is dust. Your people bowed. Yet here you hide like a parasite. Callan blinked slowly. He didn't respond. His cheek pressed against the cheek rest of the rifle. He made no move to fire. Not yet. You think your silence frightens us? Trex bellowed. You are a delay, nothing more. You are a footnote in our report. Through the reticle, Callan watched the commander gesture with gloved hands. His armor had been upgraded overnight. Extra plating over the torso, reinforced joints. But there, again, was a vulnerability. The collar sealed the neck, which lifted slightly every time he turned his head. Alien pride had left a slit of opportunity, a gap that no energy weapon would exploit. But Callan's old Earth rifle wasn't bound by expectations. He centered the reticle on it, finger poised, breath easing out, and then the world shifted. A cry echoed through the forest below. Not alien, not military. Human, a child's. His breath caught. From the edge of the compound, a young girl stumbled into view, skin pale, eyes wide, clutching a dented metal canister. She looked no older than 12. Dirty, thin, terrified. She must have been hiding, maybe for days, maybe longer. Somehow, she'd slipped through the chaos, and now she stood in full view of the aliens who had no reason to show mercy. Trex turned. His weapon came up slowly. Callan's crosshairs shifted instinctively from the collar of the commander to the barrel of the alien's rifle. He could fire. He could knock it away. But it wasn't a guaranteed kill. Worse, it would give away his position for a shot that wouldn't end the war. The girl froze. Trex stepped forward. Callan held his breath. The wind stilled. Then she bolted. Fast. Smart. A pulse beam fired from the commander's rifle, slicing inches above her shoulder. It hit a tree, erupting in orange flame. She dropped into a roll and vanished into the undergrowth. Gone. Callan didn't wait. The rifle cracked. The bullet slammed into Trex's lower leg, just above the ankle joint. The commander roared as he fell, armor flaring with short-circuiting servos. His weapon clattered to the ground. Alarm screamed across the outpost. Scouts scrambled for cover, eyes on the hills. Varn yelled for the drones, but they were already blind. Callan had jammed their senses again when an analog burst fired from a discarded satellite dish. He didn't linger at the nest. He had already planned the next move. Crawling backward over gravel and roots, he pulled himself to a secondary position half a kilometer down. His body screamed in protest. The wound in his leg had reopened. Blood soaked into the dirt. His vision swam, but he moved like a machine, deliberate, patient, inevitable. At the edge of the compound, he waited for nightfall, for the storm of panic to settle. And as darkness claimed the valley, he approached for the final kill. He carried one bullet. The last. He had saved it for this moment. He reached the outer perimeter undetected, slipping between collapsed walls and broken beams. Every step was pain, every breath a threat, but he kept going. He'd survived worse than this. He wasn't just a soldier now. He was the message. The camp was quiet again, too quiet, but he saw the glow of plasma through the tent walls. Trex was alive, wounded, furious, still commanding. From behind the shattered wing of an old Earth fighter jet, Callan raised his rifle and took aim. Trex emerged seconds later, hobbling on his damaged leg. Face half covered in cracked plating, eyes wild with rage. A plasma rifle in one hand, a long dagger in the other. You should have died with the rest of your kind, he hissed, scanning the darkness. Callan didn't speak. He didn't blink. He fired. The last bullet screamed through the air, invisible and absolute. It struck just beneath the chin, right where the collar gapped. It punched through armor, bone, and spine with one decisive crack. Trex staggered once, then fell backward in silence. The dagger clattered beside him. It was over. No sound, no cheers, just the hush of wind through a dead world. Varn found the body 10 minutes later. He didn't raise his rifle, didn't even call for backup. He simply stared at the hole in Trex's neck and then at the empty sky above. By morning, the scouts were gone. Extraction shuttles arrived without ceremony. The camp was burned. The report filed under emergency code. Engaged by unknown threat. Severe losses. Hostile terrain. Unfit for occupation. Callan collapsed beneath a shattered overpass 2 ridges east. He passed out with the sunrise on his face and his rifle beside him, smoke-stained and bloodied. 3 days later, a UN recon drone found him, barely breathing, but alive. His rifle was recovered, his footage reviewed. The shot, the final one, was uploaded across secure Earth networks. The galaxy watched and listened. Earth was not a grave. It was a warning. A world that had lost everything, except the will to fight.